Hello, I'm Eric Behan, and I'm here interviewing my grandpa, Raymond Behan. And the first question, can you describe your life during the 1960s, the presidencies of Kennedy and Johnson? How old were you?
In 1960, I was graduating from law school. I was 28 years old. I turned 29 during that year.
Where did you live? What was your home like, and who did you live with?
Well, at the 1960, as I was graduating, I lived at my parents' home in Detroit, Michigan. And right after graduation, I moved here to Lansing, Michigan. And I lived with about 4 other guys. I was still single, so I lived with 4 other guys in Lansing Township.
Where were you in school? If so, type, area of study. If you had a job, what were you doing with your job?
My last job prior to going to law school was the United States Army. And I was serving in Korea after the war. And then I started law school, and I didn't do any work other than study in law school until I graduated. After graduation, my first job was with the Old American Bank and Trust Company in downtown Lansing. And that started in June of 1960.
What were the major events in your life during this period? Did you get married? Did you have any children? And military service?
Military service was over. I was in what they call the standby reserve, but they never bothered me with that. And finally, about 1963, I got my final military discharge. I was single right up until I got married in 1964. And in 1965, we had a son, Michael, your father. And in 1967, we had a daughter, Elizabeth, your aunt.
Describe the fashion trends of the 1960s. Did you tend to wear stereotypical clothing?
As an attorney, I think I dressed very conservatively. I normally wore, just like I'm wearing today, a tab collar, and I wore, this tie is very heavy, very big compared to the ties we wore then. I have a picture taken in 1962 of myself with a bunch of other lawyers at Northwestern University on a special course we were taking, and you can see in that picture right in the middle, I have a very narrow tie, and that was my favorite tie. I love those ties, but they're really out of fashion now.
So what were the other fashions like then? What did women wear?
Well, dresses, and let's see, there's one thing I have here that, here it is. I have your grandmother's passport with a picture of her in 1962. You might want to look at that. And you can see she's a beautiful girl. And she had kind of bouffanted hair, and that was the rage through the 60s. Similar hairstyles to the movie stars at that time, and also, I think a lot of people tried to fashion themselves after Audrey Hepburn, who was a very famous movie star in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
In the 1960s, what kinds of things did you do for fun? Like on a typical weekend night, what would you be doing?
Well, I'd take my girlfriend out on a date. Sometimes we go to the movies, sometimes we go out to dinner. Sometimes we'd do such things as bowling. I used to bowl with an old club here in town. We also, during the day and on weekends, played tennis with the guys I live with. And on occasion we played golf. As a matter of fact, during the summer of 1963, I was playing golf about 3 or 4 times a week at the old Red Cedar golf course. The 9-hole golf course, easy golf course. And that's pretty much. On occasion I was a member of the ski club, but I've got to say I never was a skier. I tried a few times, but I wasn't very good.
What was the music like in the 1960s? Who were the most popular artists? Did you like them? And do you still listen to them today?
Yes, I usually listen to the same people I listen to them. And when they put on all this jazzy stuff, I usually change the station.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of them. Frankie Lane I liked a lot, all through the 50s and the 60s. And of course, you can't listen to him any longer, he's gone. But Nat King Cole was very popular with smooth music. And we had a lot of, these kind of mellow singers. Frank Sinatra was always my favorite, still is,
Mm-hmm.
but he's not making records anymore, he's been dead for a while.
Which world and national events affected your life most when they occurred? What do you remember about them? In what way did they affect you? The election of 1960, do you remember that?
Very well, yes. I was studying for the bar during that time, and the debates were on between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy, and they were very interesting, very well done. Those debates probably more, in my opinion, more than anything, helped him, John F. Kennedy, win a very narrow election, and I enjoyed him a lot. That was a very exciting time.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, I was fairly young. I was just out of law school, and I was making money kind of for the first time in years. The Army didn't pay a lot.
The Bay of Pigs invasion.
What I thought of the Bay of Pigs, that was a disaster. I remember it very well. A lot of people lost their lives. And it's something that shouldn't have happened. I can understand what did happen. The Cubans had come to this country. They wanted to go home. They thought they would get support from the Americans, and they didn't. They didn't get the air support. It was stopped at the end, and as a result, it failed. It was quite an embarrassment at the time.
Mm-hmm. The Cuban Missile Crisis?
That was much more dangerous than we could have conceivably realized at that time.
Mm-hmm.
What happened in the crisis is Washington knew, but we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that something was going on, but that could have put us into World War III very easily. Fortunately, it worked out. The Russians backed down, although I understand they made agreements with the Russians that we would pull some of our weapons out of Turkey, and it was very complicated. And I think probably some of the negotiations are probably still secret.
Mm-hmm. Building of the Berlin Wall.
I don't think that affected the people in this country a great deal. We heard a lot about it. It was very important to the folks in Europe and, of course, in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
And it just showed that we really did have a Cold War going with the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
They were unrelenting. And eventually, of course, as you know, in recent times, under President Reagan, they brought the wall down. But it took 30 years or more.
Yep. The first American in space, Alan Shepard, in 1961.
I remember very well. I walked across the street from the bank building when at the appointed time when they were going to shoot him up into the sky, and there was a video store, where it was actually a television store, and I sat there for about an hour watching the whole affair, and it was very exciting. And of course, that was the first of many trips, and for the most part, I tried to watch them all.
Do you remember the Soviets going up into space at all?
They went up very early, before we did,
Mm-hmm.
and that was felt to be an embarrassment by our country because we wanted to go first, but they went first, and that I think was called the Sputnik, and it was successful. So they were the first into space.
The Kennedy assassination.
That was a very tough day. I remember it extremely well. I remember hearing somebody just came into my office and told me that Kennedy had been shot. At that point, we didn't know he had been killed.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately, I went down to your great-grandfather's restaurant down the street, met my then fiancée, your now grandmother, and we sat there and watched the television for the whole afternoon. I canceled everything I had going. It was very, very dramatic, and of course he was determined to be dead. And changed everything in this country for a long time.
Mm-hmm.